They say betrayal hurts most when it comes from your own blood. But no one tells you what it feels like when that betrayal destroys your name. The night it happened, I sat at the dinner table surrounded by my family, the people who were supposed to protect me, and suddenly, I became a stranger among them. It started with one sentence. "So, Maya, do you still talk to Ryan?" Ethan's voice sliced through the laughter like a knife. My heart stopped. The spoon in my hand trembled, and for a second, I couldn't breathe. Ryan. The one name I had buried deep. The one mistake I had promised myself never to let define me. The room went silent. Even the sound of the ceiling fan felt too loud. My husband, Daniel, looked up from his plate. My mother's eyes darted between us, pretending to smile, pretending nothing had just exploded in the air. I forced a laugh, trying to keep my voice calm. "That was years ago, Ethan. Why bring it up now?" He leaned back, smirking like he'd just opened a gift. "Oh, just making conversation. People deserve to know who they married." The way he said it, slow, deliberate, made my skin crawl. I could feel my cheeks burn, not from guilt, but from humiliation. My own brother, the one who held my hand when I first left for college, was now using my past as a weapon. I looked at him, and in his eyes, I saw something darker than jealousy. It was pride, the pride of seeing me fall, even if he had to push me himself. Daniel's fork clattered against the plate. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. His silence was loud enough. My mother sighed, the same sigh she used whenever I embarrassed the family. No one defended me. Not one. In that moment, I understood something I wish I never had to learn. In families like mine, love is conditional, but shame is permanent. I sat there, my throat tight, my heart bleeding behind a frozen smile. And as Ethan lifted his glass and toasted, I whispered to myself, "You've started a war you won't win." People always said the Lewis family was perfect, a family of respect, tradition, and pride. From the outside, our home looked like a picture of unity. Every Sunday dinner, my mother, Olivia, would set the table with her fine china, the same ones she claimed were symbols of our family's reputation. My father, Henry, would sit at the head, quiet but authoritative, and Ethan, my brother, would be right beside him, his laughter filling the room like music everyone was forced to enjoy. And then there was me, Maya, sitting across the table, always smiling, always careful. I had learned long ago that being the daughter in this family meant being invisible unless I was being corrected. When I was younger, I tried to win their approval in small ways, topping my classes, helping mom with guests, pretending not to notice when Ethan's achievements were celebrated louder than mine. Every graduation, every family event, he was the pride of the Lewis name. And I was the reminder that daughters are supposed to bring quiet honor, not attention. "Don't talk too much, Maya," Mom would whisper before guests arrived. "Smile. People respect grace, not opinion." So I did. I smiled. I stayed graceful. But inside, I felt like a ghost wearing a polite mask. When I married Daniel, I thought I had finally broken free. He was kind, respectful, and most of all, different. For the first time, I felt seen. My parents seemed proud, or at least relieved. "Our daughter married well," my father said at the wedding, clinking his glass. I thought that was love. Later, I realized it was just convenience. My marriage was another way to strengthen their reputation. Ethan, of course, was the golden brother everyone compared me to. Handsome, confident, running the family business with charm. When Daniel joined our gatherings, Ethan treated him like a new recruit to impress. They bonded easily, sharing business talk and subtle jokes I didn't understand. My mother adored their friendship. "Two strong men leading the family," she'd say with pride. And just like that, I was fading again. I noticed how Daniel began to listen more to Ethan's advice than mine. "He's just trying to help," Daniel would say whenever I mentioned it. Maybe he was right. But something in Ethan's tone always carried a warning, as if reminding me that no matter where I went, I'd never rise above him. One evening, during a small family get-together, Mom made her usual comment. "Maya, you're lucky Daniel's such a patient man. You've always been emotional." She said it with a smile, but her eyes didn't. Ethan laughed softly. That's our Maya. Heart first, logic later. The table erupted in light laughter. I forced a smile too, even as my hands clenched under the tablecloth. I glanced at Daniel, hoping for a small gesture of support, maybe a hand squeeze, maybe a look that said, I'm with you. But he just smiled awkwardly and sipped his drink. In that moment, I realized something painful. Love means nothing when people believe someone else's version of you more than your truth. Still, I tried to keep peace. I hosted dinners, helped Mom organize events, visited Dad's office with coffee just to make him smile. I even tried to bridge the gap with Ethan, bringing up old childhood memories. Remember how we used to sneak cookies before dinner? I said once. He chuckled without looking at me. Yeah, before you grew up and started keeping secrets. That word, secrets, stayed with me. His tone wasn't teasing. It was heavy, knowing. Like he was already planning something I couldn't yet see. But life went on, or at least it pretended to. On the surface, we looked unbreakable, a family that dined together, laughed together, lived in harmony. But beneath every smile, I could feel the cracks widening. Ethan's compliments carried hidden edges. Mom's approval came with silent judgment. And Daniel's trust, it began to feel fragile, like glass in someone else's hand. One night, as I cleared the dishes, I overheard Ethan talking to Daniel on the patio. His tone was casual, but his words weren't. Just make sure you know everything about your wife, Daniel. Sometimes people hide who they really are. I froze behind the curtain, my heart pounding. I should have stepped out, demanded an explanation. But I didn't. I just stood there, my whole body trembling with a truth I couldn't yet name. It started slowly, not with a scream, but with a whisper. A whisper that spread through my family, like poison. After that night on the patio, things began to shift. Ethan's words, make sure you know everything about your wife, had planted a seed in Daniel's mind. I could feel it every time he hesitated before asking me something, every time his eyes searched mine as if waiting for me to confirm some hidden truth. It wasn't just Daniel. My mother began to act differently too, sweeter than usual, too careful. She started calling more often, always with the same line, just checking if everything's all right between you two. But I could hear the curiosity behind her voice, the quiet satisfaction that something might not be all right. One Sunday afternoon, Ethan came over with a new car, a gift from my father. The entire family gathered outside, admiring it. My mother's eyes glowed with pride as she said, Ethan deserves it. He's been carrying this family's name on his shoulders. I stood there, holding a tray of lemonade. No one noticed me. I smiled anyway and handed out the glasses. But then Ethan looked at me, smirking. Maya, maybe next time you'll get one too. Oh wait. Daniel's still paying off that little apartment loan, right? Laughter. Soft, polite, poisonous laughter. Daniel tried to laugh it off, but I could see the irritation flicker in his eyes. Later, he snapped at me for something small, forgetting to send an email to his mother. It wasn't about the email. It was about pride. Ethan had found his way between us. Over the next few weeks, the humiliation became quieter but sharper. During dinners, Ethan would drop comments like, some people just get lucky in marriage, or Dad always said sons carry legacy, daughters just borrow it. My mother would nod faintly, never disagreeing. Even my father, the one who had once called me his little star, stayed silent. I tried to hold on to my dignity, but silence began to suffocate me. One evening, when Ethan was visiting again, my mother decided to bring up something I hadn't expected. She placed a stack of papers on the table, property documents. Your father and I are finalizing the inheritance arrangements, she said softly, not looking at me. We thought it's best to keep things simple. I already knew what that meant. Ethan's name was on everything. The house, the business, the land. Mine wasn't anywhere. I swallowed hard. So, I get nothing? Mom smiled faintly. Maya, you're married now. You have your husband's home. Ethan has to take care of the family legacy. Legacy. I laughed bitterly. You mean control? Ethan leaned forward, pretending concern. Don't take it personally, Maya. It's just business. You always said you didn't care about money. I stood up, my voice trembling. I didn't care about money, but I cared about being treated like family. My father sighed, not meeting my eyes. Maya, please don't make a scene. I turned to him, my throat tight. You mean don't embarrass Ethan? That was the first time I saw my brother's smirk fade. For a moment, he looked threatened. But then he smiled again, calm, composed, victorious. Later that night, I sat alone in my car, staring at the dark windows of a house I grew up in. Every light inside seemed to glow with someone else's pride, never mine. Daniel called. Your mom told me what happened, he said quietly. Maybe it's for the best. It's not worth fighting over. Not worth fighting over. The words sank deep. Was I not worth fighting for? The next morning, I woke up to a storm, not of rain, but of whispers. My cousin Clara called me in tears. Maya, I think you should know. Ethan's been talking. He told people you were reckless in college, that you had a secret friendship with someone named Ryan. My whole body went cold. Ryan. Again. I felt something inside me break, not just pain, but betrayal so deep it silenced even my tears. I called Ethan. Why are you doing this? He laughed, casual. Relax, Maya. People deserve to know the truth. You can't hide forever. The truth, I whispered. Or the version that makes you look clean? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The line went dead. That evening, my mother called, voice low but trembling with judgment. Maya, did you really have some history with this man? You should have told Daniel before marriage. It wasn't a question. It was a verdict. That's when I realized Ethan hadn't just stolen my inheritance. He had stolen my respect. My mother believed him. My husband doubted me. My father stayed silent. I stood in front of the mirror that night, staring at myself, a woman surrounded by family, yet completely alone. My reflection looked calm, but my eyes burned with something new. That night, I didn't cry. I just whispered to my reflection, "You've taken everything from me, Ethan. Now it's my turn." After that night, something inside me shifted. A quiet storm began to build. I tried to move on, to act normal, but in my family, silence was never peace. It was just the space before the next humiliation. Weeks passed, and Ethan's poison spread everywhere. My mother started treating me like a fragile guest, not her daughter. My father barely looked up when I entered a room. And Daniel, he had started to keep his distance. At dinner one night, when I placed his plate on the table, he said softly, "You should have just told me about Ryan before. It wouldn't have mattered." I looked at him. Wouldn't it? Because it seems like it matters to everyone now. He sighed, rubbing his forehead. You're making this harder, Maya. Just let it go. Let it go. The phrase echoed in my mind like a command I was too tired to obey. The real blow came during our parents' anniversary party, the biggest family event of the year. The entire extended family was there, cousins, uncles, business associates. It was the kind of evening my mother lived for. She'd spent weeks planning every detail, the decorations, the food, the music. When I arrived, dressed in a pale silver sari Daniel had once said made me look untouchable, I could feel every pair of eyes turn toward me. But not with admiration, with quiet curiosity. Whispers chased me across the room. Is that her? One woman murmured to another. Poor Daniel, another whispered. I wanted to disappear. Ethan, of course, was the star of the evening, laughing, hugging everyone, clinking glasses. When he saw me, he smiled too brightly. My sister's here. The quiet one. I smiled politely, trying to stay out of trouble. He leaned closer, his voice low enough for only me to hear. You always find it though, don't you? That was Ethan's gift. He could wound you so subtly, no one else would even notice. Later that night, my mother took the microphone to give her speech. I'm grateful for my children, she said warmly, her gaze lingering on Ethan. Ethan has been such a blessing, strong, dependable, always putting family first. She paused, barely glancing at me. And Maya, well, she's learning to be stronger. Polite applause followed. My throat tightened as I forced a smile. Clara, my cousin, squeezed my hand under the table. You don't deserve this, she whispered. But the real humiliation was still to come. Halfway through dinner, Ethan stood up and announced, "Before we cut the cake, I made something special for our parents, a slideshow of memories." The crowd clapped, excited. I felt a strange unease crawl up my spine. The lights dimmed, and the screen flickered to life. Childhood photos, family trips, smiles, and then suddenly an image that froze me. A picture of me and Ryan. Old, blurry, harmless, but in that moment it became something else. The laughter in the room faded into silence. My heart pounded in my chest as I stared at the screen, unable to move. Ethan's voice filled the silence. Ah, college days. Maya always had a big heart. A few chuckles. A few shocked gasps. I felt my skin burn. My hands shook. I wanted to scream, but the words died in my throat. My mother turned her face away. My father looked down at his plate. And Daniel, he just stared at the photo, his jaw clenched, eyes cold. I stood up quietly and walked out of the room. No one followed. Outside, the night air felt heavy. My breath came in sharp bursts. My brother had just turned my life into a performance, my dignity into a joke. Clara came after me, tears in her eyes. Maya, you can't let this go. I looked at her, my voice steady. I won't. The next day, the whispers became open judgment. Mrs. Harris, our neighbor, stopped me on the street. Oh, dear, I saw those pictures. You were quite free-spirited back then. Her tone was sugar laced with venom. I smiled tightly. And yet, here I am, still standing. At home, Daniel barely spoke. My calls went unanswered. My family's group chat went silent except for Ethan's smug messages. Hope you're okay, sis. Didn't mean to embarrass you. Didn't mean to. I started noticing things. Daniel spending late nights at work, my mother avoiding my visits, my father's refusal to answer my calls. Every act of neglect felt heavier than words. Every silence screamed louder than accusations. And in the middle of it all, Ethan thrived. He had everything he ever wanted, respect, attention, and my ruin. But what he didn't know was that his victory had woken something inside me, something patient, calculating, cold. That night, as I sat in my empty living room staring at the flickering lights from the party video still circulating on social media, I whispered to myself, "You've taken my peace, Ethan. But you've also taken away my fear." The next morning, I opened my laptop and began to dig into Ethan's life, determined to uncover a secret that would finally turn his world upside down. There's a kind of silence that doesn't heal. It lingers, heavy, breathless, like a wound that keeps bleeding even when no one can see it. That's the silence that filled my world after that night. Days passed, but the humiliation didn't fade. It echoed, in the way neighbors stopped meeting my eyes, in the way my mother's voice grew colder, in the way Daniel's distance turned into absence. At first, I waited. I told myself he just needed time. That maybe, deep down, he knew I hadn't done anything wrong. But denial is a kind of hope, and hope is the cruelest lie you can tell yourself when the truth is already standing in front of you. One morning, I found out he'd moved into the guest room. No explanation. No argument. Just distance. When I confronted him, he said quietly, "I just need space, Maya. I can't handle all this noise." All this noise. I repeated, my voice shaking. "You mean my brother's lies?" He didn't answer. That silence broke something inside me. Not loudly. Not with tears. Just a quiet shattering. Meanwhile, Ethan became the hero of every story. I saw photos of him and my parents at charity events, smiling, polished, untouchable. Every picture was a reminder they had closed ranks. I was the scandal they had erased. A week later, my mother called. Her tone was firm, rehearsed. "Maya, we're finalizing the legal paperwork for the property next week. Your father wants everything to be settled before the holidays." I already knew what she meant. Still, I asked, "And what about me?" A pause. Then, "You're married now, Maya. Daniel is responsible for you. This is family property. Ethan will take care of it." I laughed bitterly. He's been taking care of himself just fine. Maybe that's the problem. "Maya," she snapped, her voice sharp. "Don't turn this into another scene. You've embarrassed us enough." Embarrassed. That word again, as if I had chosen to be humiliated. When I hung up, I realized it was over. Not just the inheritance. My place. My belonging. My name. The next day, Clara came to see me. Her face was pale, her hands shaking. "They're signing tomorrow," she whispered. "Ethan told everyone you didn't deserve a share because you would have wasted it. He said you had a history of poor choices." I felt my breath leave me. "He said that." She nodded. "And he told Daniel that you still talk to Ryan." I almost laughed, a hollow, bitter laugh. "Still talk to him? I haven't seen him in years." "I know," Clara said softly. "But they don't." That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching the streetlights blur through my tears. My phone buzzed, a message from Ethan. "Don't fight it, Maya. You'll only make it worse. Accept it quietly, and people will forget sooner." I stared at his words until they blurred. My hands shook as I typed back. "You've taken everything you can. But I promise you, one day, you'll wish you hadn't." He didn't reply. He didn't have to. The next morning, I went to my parents' house anyway. I knew I wasn't invited, but I needed to see it with my own eyes. When I entered, the lawyer was already there. Ethan sat beside my father, confident, smiling, as if he were born to rule over everything I had ever loved. My mother stood by the window, her face cold and distant. "Why are you here, Maya?" she asked without turning. "Because I'm part of this family," I said quietly. Ethan leaned back. "You were, Maya. Things change." My father avoided my eyes. "Let's just finish this," he said. I stood there, watching as they signed document after document, my name nowhere to be seen. Every stroke of the pen was like a cut. When it was over, the lawyer gathered the papers and left. No one spoke. I finally whispered, "You've disowned your daughter to protect your son's lies." My father closed his eyes. "We're protecting our reputation." "Reputation," I repeated. "At the cost of your blood." Ethan smiled faintly. "You always did take things too personally." That was it. The end of everything I thought I belonged to. When I stepped outside, the air felt different, colder, cleaner, sharper. My tears had dried before they could fall. I realized something strange. The pain wasn't consuming me anymore. It was transforming. For days after, I barely spoke. People whispered when they saw me at the market. Daniel moved out completely, leaving a note that said, "I need time to think." Time. That's all anyone seemed to need, except me. I didn't need time. I needed clarity. I spent my days replaying every conversation, every insult, every smirk Ethan ever gave me. And slowly, the humiliation turned into focus. I began to remember things, small details that didn't make sense before. Ethan's late-night calls, his fake business trips, the time my father mentioned missing money from the company accounts, and the time Clara hinted that Ethan might be hiding debts. The pieces started falling into place. He wasn't clean. He was just careful. And I realized the only thing stronger than my pain was the truth I could use to destroy him. I looked at myself in the mirror that night. My reflection looked calm, almost serene. "You've taken my name," I whispered, "but you haven't taken my mind." That was the moment the shift happened, when grief turned into purpose. I wasn't going to cry anymore. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to prove myself to people who didn't want to see me. I was going to make them see me. And when I did, they'd wish they never looked my way. Final line, turning point. That night, I stopped being the daughter they disowned and became the storm they never saw coming. People think revenge is loud, shouting, breaking, burning. But the truth is, real revenge begins in silence. It starts the moment your tears dry and your heartbeat steadies not with grief, but with purpose. After the disinheritance, after Daniel left, My life became painfully quiet. My phone stopped ringing. My mother didn't call. Ethan had won, or at least that's what he thought. I spent days sitting by the window, staring at the empty street outside, numb. But inside that numbness, something new began to grow. Not hate, but clarity. I stopped asking why. I started asking how. How had Ethan managed to twist everyone so easily? How had he covered his own secrets while exposing mine? So I did what no one expected. I watched. I listened. I waited. The first clue came from Clara. She showed up one evening, her face pale but her eyes fierce. "Maya," she whispered, "you need to see this." She placed a small folder on the table, photos, bank statements, email screenshots. "Ethan's been taking money from the company."
"Dad doesn't know."
"He's been using your name in one of his shell accounts." For a second, I couldn't breathe. "Using my name?" Clara nodded. "He thought no one would look too closely. You were already the family's black sheep, the perfect scapegoat." The anger that surged through me wasn't wild anymore. It was clean, focused, cold. That night, I opened my laptop and began collecting everything: transaction records, company reports, old messages Ethan had sent me. Every thread that connected to his fake accounts, I traced. It wasn't easy. My hands shook, my heart raced, but with every piece of evidence, I felt my strength return. Ethan's reputation was built on lies, and I was going to make the truth his ruin. I started small. I called Ryan, the friend whose name had been used to destroy mine. He hesitated at first, his voice wary. "Maya, after everything that happened, are you sure you want to stir this up again?" I took a deep breath. "I don't want revenge for what you and I had. I want justice for what he's done." Ryan agreed to help. He still worked in finance, and within a week, he found traces of Ethan's transactions leading to an offshore account. "He's laundering money through a fake consultancy," he said. "And he's using your old college email as part of the setup. It's deliberate." It was worse than I thought. He wasn't just ruining my reputation, he was building his empire on my identity. I spent the next few weeks pretending to move on. I posted smiling photos, sent polite texts to my mother, acted like I was fading into irrelevance. Ethan relaxed. He even called once, his tone almost pitying. "You'll feel better once you stop fighting it, Maya," he said softly. "I just want peace between us." I smiled through the phone. "Peace always comes after the storm, Ethan. Not before." That same night, I sent a copy of all the evidence to a private investigator Clara trusted, someone who'd worked for my father once. "I need these findings verified," I told him. "And I want the results in writing." Within days, I had a complete report, detailed, dated, undeniable. Ethan had been stealing from the company for 2 years, covering his tracks by forging my signature on small transfers that made me look careless, even dishonest. I stared at the documents, my pulse calm, my breath steady. The power had shifted, even if no one knew it yet. But revenge isn't just about proof, it's about timing. If I went too early, my parents would defend him. Daniel might even believe I forged the evidence out of spite. No, I had to make them see it themselves, to make Ethan expose himself, the way he had done to me. So I planned it.
Carefully, patiently.
My parents' anniversary was coming up again, a grand dinner, just like last year's humiliation. I offered to help organize it, pretending to rebuild peace. "It's time to put the past behind us," I told my mother. She believed me, or maybe she just wanted to believe the daughter who stopped arguing. I volunteered to handle the slideshow, the same tradition Ethan used to destroy me. He smiled when he heard that. "Good idea, Maya. Let's make it memorable this time." "Oh, it will be," I said softly. In that slideshow, I planned to include everything: the proof, the emails, the bank statements, even his fake signatures. But I wasn't going to present it like evidence. I was going to weave it into the family story, slowly, beautifully, until the truth revealed itself on its own. Every night before bed, I rehearsed what I'd say when the moment came. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to scream. I was going to stand in front of them, calm and unshaken, and let Ethan's lies destroy themselves. As the date approached, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: strength. My voice grew steadier, my steps lighter. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw not the broken woman they tried to erase, but someone dangerous, someone who had nothing left to lose. Clara hugged me the night before the event. Are you sure, Maya? Once this starts, there's no going back. I smiled faintly. There never was a way back, Clara. Only forward. When I closed my eyes that night, I wasn't afraid. I could already picture it. The lights dimming, the faces turning pale, the truth playing out on screen. As I packed the final USB drive into my purse, my hands trembled, not with fear, but anticipation. Tomorrow, I would walk into that same room Ethan once used to destroy me, and this time, I'd be the one holding the remote. The night of the anniversary arrived like a storm disguised as celebration. The house was glowing. Gold drapes, candlelight, guests dressed to impress. Everything looked perfect, polished, untouchable. Just like last year. But this time, I wasn't the fragile woman standing in the shadows. I was the silence before the thunder. When I entered, my mother smiled stiffly. Maya, you look lovely. Thank you for helping with the arrangements. I returned her smile. Anything for family, Mom. Ethan was radiant, laughing, clinking glasses, shaking hands. He looked untouchable, confident, exactly the way a man looks before he falls. He caught my eye and grinned. Glad to see you're part of the family again, sis. Always was, I said quietly and turned away. The guests filled the hall. The music softened. My father took the microphone, his deep voice echoing. Tonight, we celebrate not just years of marriage, but the legacy of family. Applause followed, polite and hollow. I stood near the projector table, my hand resting lightly on the remote. My pulse was steady. Every breath felt deliberate. I'd spent weeks perfecting this. Every slide, every transition, every word. When my father finished, my mother gestured toward Ethan. Ethan prepared a speech, she said proudly. He's always been our pride. Ethan smiled and stepped forward, glass in hand. Family is about loyalty, he began. About protecting what matters most: honor, trust, reputation. He looked at me as he said it. Even when one of us forgets that. Soft laughter rippled through the room. I smiled too. It was almost poetic, how he didn't know he was walking straight into his own trap. When he finished, my father nodded. Now, Maya has something she'd like to share. The lights dimmed.
My voice was calm.
Yes, I made a small slideshow, a tribute to our family, a reminder of what we've built together. I pressed play. Soft music began. Childhood photos, wedding pictures, family dinners, all smiles and warmth. People laughed, clapped, wiped away tears. Ethan looked relaxed, proud. Then came the next slide. A bank statement. His name. My forged signature. The company logo. A few confused murmurs rose. Ethan frowned, glancing toward me. The slides shifted again. Emails, transfers, offshore account numbers. And then a single sentence appeared across the screen in bold letters. Who really protects this family's reputation? Gasps echoed. My father leaned forward, squinting. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Ethan's face turned pale. What is this? He demanded. I stepped closer to the microphone, my voice steady. This is the truth you buried, Ethan. The truth you hid behind my name. He shook his head, forcing a laugh. You're insane. You made this up. I clicked again, a video file opened. Ethan's voice filled the room. A recording. His own words. She'll never find out. I used her email for the transfers. It looks clean. A gasp spread through the hall like fire. Daniel, who had been standing near the door, froze. His eyes widened. My father slowly stood up, shaking his head. Ethan, tell me this is some kind of joke. Ethan stammered. Dad, it's edited. She's framing me. I turned to him. Framing you? You did that to yourself the day you decided my life was yours to ruin. My mother whispered, Oh my God. The crowd had gone silent. Even the music stopped. The only sound was Ethan's heavy breathing, his voice cracking with panic. I walked closer. You said truth deserves to be told, remember? You told everyone about my past, about things that never mattered. But this is the truth that matters. The one that shows who you really are. My father slammed his hand on the table. Ethan, is it true? Ethan tried to speak, but his words broke apart. I just borrowed it. I meant to put it back. The shame in his voice was louder than any denial. The room erupted. Whispers, gasps, murmurs. My father's face turned red with fury. My mother began to cry, not for me, but for the image of perfection that had just shattered before her eyes. Daniel walked up beside me, his expression unreadable. You knew all this time? He asked quietly. I nodded, and I waited for the right moment to show it. He looked at Ethan, disgusted. You destroyed your sister for this? Ethan glared at me, shaking his head. You planned this. You set me up. I smiled faintly. No, brother. I just pressed play. He lunged forward, but my father stopped him. Enough, he roared. You've humiliated this family, Ethan. You've humiliated me. The silence that followed was deafening. For the first time in years, every eye in the room was on me, but not with judgment, not with pity, with respect. I turned off the projector and looked around the hall. I never wanted revenge, I said softly. I wanted peace. But peace doesn't come from silence. It comes from truth. Ethan sank into a chair, his face pale, his voice barely a whisper. You ruined me. I stepped closer, meeting his eyes.
No, Ethan.
You ruined yourself. I just stopped protecting you. Daniel reached for my hand. My mother sat in stunned silence, her tears streaking through her makeup. My father turned to me, his voice trembling. Maya, I was wrong. I didn't answer. Some wounds don't heal with apologies. They only stop bleeding when justice is done. The crowd began to leave quietly, whispering, avoiding Ethan's eyes. The golden room that once glowed with pride now felt hollow, stripped of illusion. As I stood there, surrounded by shattered silence, I finally exhaled. The weight I'd carried for years, the humiliation, the loneliness, the shame, lifted, piece by piece. Ethan covered his face with his hands. My mother turned away. My father walked out. And I, the woman they once silenced, stood tall under the same chandelier that had once witnessed my humiliation. In that moment, I realized I hadn't just exposed my brother, I had reclaimed my voice. And in a family built on silence, that was the loudest revenge of all. The days that followed were eerily quiet, as if the house itself was mourning what had been lost. For years, that home had been filled with noise, the clinking of glasses, the polite laughter, the hollow speeches about family values. But after that night, there was only silence. And in that silence, the truth lingered, heavy, undeniable, irreversible. Ethan didn't show up at the house again. My father told him to stay away until further notice. My mother refused to leave her room for days. The woman who once worshipped reputation now hid from her own reflection. Daniel and I sat in our car after the confrontation, neither of us speaking for a long time. The night air outside was cold, but inside, the quiet between us felt heavier than the storm that had just passed. Finally, he spoke. You could have told me, Maya, about what you were planning. I turned to him, my voice calm. Would you have believed me if I had? He looked down. His silence was my answer. For a long moment, we just sat there, two people who had once been united by love, now divided by doubt that had been planted by someone else. But for the first time, I didn't feel small in his silence. I didn't feel the need to explain or prove myself anymore. I had done what I came to do. I had taken back my name. Over the next few weeks, the ripples of that night spread far. Word of Ethan's fraud reached business partners, clients, and even the small-town gossip chains my mother once fed with pride. The perfect son became the warning whispered at dinner tables. He tried calling me once. I didn't answer. Some conversations and the moment truth is spoken. My father, however, reached out. He came to see me one afternoon, his shoulders slumped, his eyes older than I remembered. He placed an envelope on my table, documents transferring half of the family property back to me. I can't undo what I allowed, he said quietly, but I can start fixing it. I looked at the papers, then back at him. I don't want your apology, Dad. I wanted your belief, but it's too late for that. He nodded, tears glistening. I know. You remind me of your grandmother. She had the same strength, the same silence. When he left, I didn't feel bitterness, just closure. Some bridges don't need burning. They collapse on their own once the lies are gone. As for my mother, she called weeks later. Her voice was frail, hesitant. Maya, I didn't know. I just wanted peace. Peace built on silence isn't peace, Mom, I said softly. It's surrender. She cried quietly, and for the first time, I didn't try to comfort her. Some wounds must stay open long enough to teach a lesson. Daniel eventually came back, not to restart our marriage, but to apologize. He stood at my door, his expression heavy with regret. I should have trusted you, he said. Ethan made me see you through his eyes, not yours. I nodded. And now that you see me clearly?
He sighed.
Now I understand that silence can destroy love faster than lies ever will. It wasn't the reconciliation. It was an ending, gentle, necessary, honest. Months passed. The scandal faded, as scandals always do, but the truth remained. Ethan disappeared from the public eye, forced to rebuild a life stripped of the image he once wore like armor. I never saw him again, but I sometimes heard from Clara that he was struggling. I didn't feel joy. I didn't need to. Justice doesn't need applause. It just needs to exist. One evening, I walked past my parents' house. The garden lights were dim, the once perfect rose bushes overgrown. I paused by the gate, remembering all the nights I had stood there feeling unworthy, unwanted, unseen. But not anymore. As I turned to leave, I whispered into the quiet air, not in anger, but in peace. The truth doesn't destroy families, lies do. The truth only reveals what was already broken. That was the last time I ever looked back. I built a new life far from that house, small, simple, but honest. I worked, I healed, I laughed again. The scars stayed, but they no longer hurt. They simply reminded me of how far I had come. Sometimes people ask if I regret exposing Ethan, if I miss the family I lost. I tell them, you can't lose what was never truly yours. Because family isn't about blood. It's about truth, loyalty, and respect, the things that no inheritance or reputation can replace. And in the end, I didn't need them to give me my dignity back. I had rebuilt it myself, piece by piece, from the ashes of their betrayal.